Okay, let's talk about that feeling, that incredibly frustrating feeling of being completely and totally stuck. The one you call laziness? Well, it turns out it's probably something else entirely. And understanding what's really going on, that could change everything. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You're just staring at your to-do list or a simple email or maybe even a pile of laundry, and your brain just will not engage. It's like the starter motor is broken. An hour can go by and you haven't moved an inch. And look, if you take away only one thing from this, let it be this. You are not lazy, you are overstimulated. What you're feeling isn't some deep character flaw. Nope, it's actually a pretty normal response from a brain that is just flooded with way too much information. There's actually a name for what you're experiencing. It's called task paralysis. And it's a real thing. It's an involuntary freeze response. And, while it can happen to literally anyone, it's super common for people dealing with things like ADHD, anxiety, or even perfectionism. So let's just go ahead and completely dismantle this whole myth of laziness, shall we? Because understanding the cycle of what's actually happening in your brain is the only way you're ever going to break free from it. So, does this little cycle here look familiar? You see a huge, overwhelming task and you immediately feel anxious. That anxiety makes you want to retreat. Maybe you grab your phone and start scrolling. But that escape doesn't bring relief, does it? It just brings on the guilt and the shame, which, you guessed it, just feeds the paralysis even more. This isn't laziness, people. It is an emotional trap. So what in the world is going on in your head during all this? Well, neuroscience basically shows us it's like a full-on cage match happening inside your skull. So let's meet the contenders. So in one corner, you've got the limbic system. It's ancient, it's powerful, and it is all about feeling good right now. It wants that dopamine hit from scrolling Instagram, and it wants it yesterday. And in the other corner, you've got the prefrontal cortex, your own little internal project manager, trying to focus on your future goals. The problem? The limbic system is way, way stronger. The psychologist Dr. Tim Pichel, he just puts it perfectly. Your brain is literally wired to choose feeling good now, even when it knows it's going to bite you later. This isn't you failing a moral test. It's just biology doing its thing. So think about it. When your brain is just overloaded with notifications and expectations and constant input, it doesn't get more productive. It gets protective. It literally shifts into survival mode and shuts things down to conserve energy. That frozen feeling, that's a defense mechanism. Now, here's where things get really interesting. It turns out that not all delay is created equal. There's actually a huge difference between that awful paralyzed feeling and other ways we put things off. And this chart makes it so clear. Just look at that first row, level of control. Procrastination, that's a voluntary choice to do something else. But task paralysis, that feels completely involuntary, like you have no say in the matter. And the emotion is different too. Procrastination is often just mild avoidance, but paralysis is driven by this intense anxiety and dread. And get this, even within procrastination itself, there are two different kinds. There's passive procrastination, which is the bad kind we all think of, that harmful anxiety-fueled delay. But then there's active procrastination, which is actually a deliberate strategy. It's when you intentionally use the pressure of a deadline to kick your motivation and creativity into high gear. Okay, so now that we get the why, let's finally get to the how. How can we start working with our brains instead of against them to move through this overwhelm and get our focus back? Well, a huge part of the answer starts with simply managing our environment. One really powerful strategy is something called digital minimalism. Now, this isn't about throwing your phone in the river. It's about using technology with intention. You start asking yourself, does this app actually support my values? And then you just declutter the rest. Seriously, think of it like Marie Kondo for your digital life. You're giving your brain some much-needed breathing room. Another game-changing concept is attention restoration. You know when your brain feels totally fried from focusing on tasks all day? That's a real thing called directed attention fatigue. And when that happens, you can't just force yourself to work harder. You have to actively restore that mental energy. So how do we do that? It's almost ridiculously simple. Get a dose of the outdoors. Research has shown that even just a short walk, or sitting in a park, or just looking out a window at some trees can replenish your brain's ability to focus. Nature is like a power-up for an overstimulated mind. Okay, now let's zoom all the way in. Let's talk about some practical, In the moment tools you can use the very next time you feel that paralysis creeping in. Probably the single most important trick is this: just lower the bar. An overwhelmed brain cannot handle big, ambitious goals. It just can't. So instead of thinking, I have to write this entire report, just reframe the goal to, I'm just going to open the document. That's it. The only goal is to start, no matter how ridiculously small. You'd be amazed how often a tiny bit of action leads to more action.
And here are 4 more super quick tools for your anti-freeze toolkit. First, the brain dump. Just grab a piece of paper and get all those swirling thoughts out of your head to clear some space. Second, try the 10-minute trick. Set a timer and just work on something for 10 minutes. That's all. You can also try adding some helpful stimulation, like putting on some focus music, or simply move your body. A few stretches can be enough to reboot your entire nervous system.
And all of this really brings us to the most important point of this whole conversation. We need a fundamental shift in how we treat ourselves when we struggle to get things done. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? The solution isn't more discipline. It's not about being harder on yourself. It's about more regulation. The goal isn't to force yourself to push through exhaustion. It's to regulate your nervous system so your mind feels safe enough for focus to come back on its own. And here's exactly how you can put that into practice. The next time you feel stuck, I want you to try and swap that shaming inner voice for a curious one. Shame freezes your nervous system, but curiosity opens it back up. Asking, what's overwhelming me right now? Literally restores your energy, while telling yourself you're lazy just drains it away. So let's just end on this question. Instead of thinking about how you can push harder, how can you protect your peace? What is one small, gentle step you can take today? Maybe it's a 5-minute walk without your phone, or turning off notifications for just 1 hour. Just remember, when your mind feels safe, focus has a funny way of just naturally returning.